Today we're going to change our fuel filter on our 2007 BMW 328xi. The filter is located in the tank and you're going to get this big assembly. It's going to have your float level gauge and a fuel pressure regulator gauge on it as well. So to get to the fuel filter assembly, we're going to pick up on the back seat and you just got to grab and pull and pop it and then feed the seat belts down through the center and the seat's going to come out. So to access the fuel tanks, we're going to lift up this little mat and you're going to see two flat discs with wires going into them. This is how we're going to access the tank. So to access the fuel filter side, I'm just going to use my 10mm socket and we're going to just pull these four nuts off. I've already loosened them. And then we're going to lift up this plate, which is going to expose the electrical connection, which I'm just going to unplug. Get the plate out of the way. And then we've got to unscrew this nut and disconnect our fuel line right here. So there's a little plastic clip that sits over here and there's probably a tool that goes in to release it. Normally I can pop them with just a small screwdriver, but this one was particularly obnoxious and didn't want to release, so I actually had to just break it off. I do have a new one on the new filter assembly, so I'm not worried about that. And then our fuel line is just going to pop out. Now, I did put a rag on top when I popped it, just so it didn't spray fuel up, and you can see there's fuel sitting down here in the filter assembly. So this ring that you see around here is what actually holds the filter assembly into the tank. And I'm just going to use a small pry bar and a screwdriver, and this is going to unscrew counterclockwise as it's threaded onto the tank. Now, these are going to be pretty tight to get started, but if I just lock up two screwdrivers, they do make a tool to do this that makes it a little bit easier. And this one's pretty tight, so I'm just going to break it free with a hammer and a plastic mallet, picking up on one of these points. Still too tight. So to disconnect our fuel filter, the lines run across to our fuel pump over on the other side of the tank. So I've taken the cover off, I'm going to disconnect the two connections right here. And then it's going to be the same procedure. I'm going to disconnect the vent line and this other fuel line right here, which is fuel return, I think, and we'll undo this screw, pop this up so we can disconnect the connections for over there. As you squeeze those two tabs and it moves the lock away. To release this line, you just squeeze that button in and pull it up, and that'll release the line. So our fuel lines come across from the other side. We have two lines here and one line right here that connects onto the fuel pump. That's going to be our pressure line. So I've disconnected, there's 2 crossover pipes and 1 fuel pump pressure pipe. To disconnect it, you've got to press this little green button, and that will spread open these little ears. Now this one was really stuck and just fought me, so getting your hands down in there can be a little bit of a challenge. But what I'm going to do now is this line runs over to our fuel filter, so I'm just going to tie a piece of string around our line so that we can attach our new lines and pull it all back through without having to try and fish it, because otherwise we'll be here for a month of Sundays. So now I'm disconnected on the other side. I'm just going to kind of feed everything out, and there's a whole bunch of pipes, so you got to kind of rotate. Coming out with the old stuff isn't such a big deal, but when we're going back in, we've got to make sure we don't damage or bend our fuel level sender. Then I'm just going to pull through our pipes, and we've got our string attached on the other end. Let some of the fuel drain back out. I'm just going to pull my string through, trying not to spill too much fuel all over the car, and take the whole assembly out. Okay, so I've tied this on. I've tied the lines together because we need the 2 fuel flex lines that are going to be pushing fuel back towards the pump. And I'm also looped around this fitting so it can't come apart. So I'm going to need somebody else to give me a hand just to pull it over, and we'll feed these back in. So we've fed the fuel lines across the tank, and we've got it sticking out on this end. You can see where we've got our string. We've pulled through our new fuel line. When it comes to getting this console in, we're going to have to kind of flex and move things around. We want to be careful that we don't damage the float. So I'm just going to kind of carefully feed in all my lines. Well, we got to rotate the whole thing because this locking tab needs to. Let's connect over there. So when it comes to releasing these fittings, you're supposed to be able to grab hold of this plastic piece, pull it forward, press the pipe forward, and then pull it out. I was unable to do that on the original one. It was just stuck in there, and I had to actually break this piece off to get it out. And what I found is the O-rings that seal this pipe to the fuel filter housing were all really dry, and I don't think they were letting it move through. So this is supposed to be the sleeve to release it, but it doesn't always work, is the point of it. So now I've run the car, I've made sure there's no fuel leaks. I'm just going to close everything back up. So I'm going to put my metal covers back on, make sure the gaskets lined up and sealed off, because this is exposed to the underside of the car where it will pick up dirt and dust, and put all this back together.